The Unorthodox Haven will cover a wide range of topics to offer unique perspectives, pushing back on conventional wisdom. We hope to inspire self-discovery over emulation. We believe you should think outside the box, regardless of what it looks or sounds like to others. Here at Unorthodox Haven, there is no right or wrong answer, just your own unique perspective. That's really about it. Mr. Donell, welcome back, bro.
Thank you, man. Good to be back.
I appreciate you, man. I want to say now while we're here on the microphone, congratulations. I am proud of you for your growth and everything you've been doing. Since you first came in here, that first time I met you, you told me the path you was on.
Yes.
And in this short little span of a couple months, you know what I mean, talking, and we don't even talk a lot, but when we do,
yes,
I'm super proud of you, bro.
Thank you.
Know what I mean? I know what you've been through. You know what I mean? I know on the surface level of what you've been through.
Yes.
And so I know how these last couple steps been kind of, you know what I mean, taking you to keep your foot on the gas.
Yes.
So,
yes.
You know what I mean? Keep going, bro.
I appreciate it.
You know what I mean?
I'm a workaholic, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, the world needs people like you, bro.
That's humbling.
Yeah.
That's really humbling.
Telling you, man, I don't think it's so much like your experience, but just the knowledge that you've accumulated in your perspective again.
Yes.
Same thing like I just mentioned before, your perspective of life and how society operates and how certain things work behind the scenes is valuable out here. So keep going, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
But what's new? What's new?
Oh man, what's not new? Everything's new. As you know, I reached out to you. I wanted to bring one of my clients up here. She has a very unique case. I was working for a law firm. I'm not going to name the firm, and the lawyer and myself had done an interview on the news about my life, where that led to people coming to the firm actually trying to hire me. You know, they thought that my paralegal and consultation firm was actually part of the law firm versus me just working for him as a paralegal. Mrs. Warner here came to the law firm one day, and she walked in and she had this big dog with curly hair. And I was like, wow, who is this? We didn't have any clients scheduled to come in that day at that time. So I was taken off guard. So she just began to talk about her case, and she was talking to the attorney's son. So she like, hey, where's your dad? She's like, he's not here today. It's just me and Donell. She's like, oh, good, because that's who I came to see. And I'm looking like, I don't know this lady. So she's like, here. And she brings some paper out. She's like, here, I need you to read this from. I need you to come work with me. I said, ma'am, like, this is not my practice. You know, my business is outside of here. So you're going to have to call me when I'm not on the clock here.
For sure.
Say, okay, well, I understand, but here, can you take this? She was very insistent that I take these documents.
Yeah.
So I took the documents. She's like, okay, nice to meet you guys. Donell, I'm looking forward to working with you. And she left. So I was like, wow, she has moxie. Just walking there like that. And she just made sure I knew that I was going to be working with her. And I was like, So I asked the guy, I said, man, who is that? He said, well, when I was studying for my the state bar, the lawyer's son said when he was studying for the state bar, he said he had spoken with her for about 3 hours. He said, man, she has a great case. I believe in it. So I said, okay. Filed that away. Eventually, I wound up leaving the law firm. The person had promised me a raise after 90 days and told me that after the 93rd day, like, oh, well, I want you to work another 45. That wasn't acceptable. I tendered my resignation.
Okay.
I make more money to work for myself. And it doesn't take as much time away from my family, but I get more time for my clients.
Yeah.
I think the first day or the second day after I resigned, I called Ms. Warner. And I was like, hey, I read the package that you gave me. Can you prove this? So she was like, yes. I'm like, okay, well, prove it to me. Convince me that what you're saying is correct. And she did so, and I said, listen, I'm going to work with you.
Let me pause you right there for a second. So we've had the conversation before, right?
Yes.
But we got some new listeners. So just short, like, tell people who you are and in a short, your story.
Okay. My name is Donell J. Blount Sr. I'm a former active duty U.S. Marine. I came out of the Marine Corps, and I wound up opening a barber shop, purchased some hot things that had been stolen through my shop. Some of those things, unfortunately, came from a robbery. I wouldn't cooperate with law enforcement and tell who I had gotten those things from, and I wound up doing 22 years in prison until the governor finally gave me clemency in 2022.
Now, did the governor give you clemency, or did you get yourself clemency?
Well, I got myself clemency.
Okay, yeah.
So I had to campaign for it. It wasn't just a matter of him saying, hey, here you go.
Yeah, that sounds a lot better than
it was,
he gave it to you.
I learned the letter of the law and then how to use it.
Okay.
And mainly I started learning that so that I could utilize it to apply to my own situation. In doing that, I was able to learn so much about various aspects of the law. So I became a real student. I wanted to know more. I was very inquisitive, and then I wanted to know how it applied. When you are in a prison environment, if you are seen as a bookworm or a legal beagle, guys will begin to present their own situations to you and ask for assistance. So I began to learn the law as it applied to their situations, and I would render whatever assistance I could while I was in there. Once the governor gave me clearance, I said, okay, now I have to get something official. I entered into a 2-year associate's program, and I finished it in 6 months.
Nice.
I graduated with honors. So, once I came home on clemency, the first thing I did was went and registered my company with the State Corporation Commission. I got my EIN number from the feds. I went out and got licensed from the city that I live in.
I don't think I asked you this last time. What's your why? Like when you came home, you could have done a bunch of things. You could have just went back to living. You could have went out here and just kind of try to experience everything you felt like you missed.
Yes.
What was your why towards this?
My why was when you do things that you aren't supposed to be doing and you're held accountable, it's like, okay, I did that. When you're punished for something that you did not do, or you're punished to an extent that you should not have been punished to, it makes you angry. You want to fight back at the system. When you're poor and you're not able to afford an attorney, your ability to defend yourself at trial diminishes greatly. So I wanted to make sure that I could take the skills that I learned while I was in there and then bring them out here to kind of even the playing field. That's not to say that I'm out here trying to get everyone off. What I am saying is that we have a system designed to where you also would have a fair trial.
Yeah.
So a fair trial means that you have to have a valuable defense. In order to have a valuable defense, you have to know how a defense works in a criminal case or a civil case for that matter. So when attorneys approach me and say, hey, here's what we're trying to do, I say, well, here is what I know. Here is what I'm capable of doing with regards to your clients. And a lot of lawyers now are hiring me to work for them as an independent paralegal.
Nice.
So my why was I wanted to come out here and make sure that, to the best of my ability, individuals did not suffer the way I suffered at the hands of the so-called justice system. So that's my why. The other thing is I am a Muslim. So I believe in justice. I believe in equity.
Okay.
And that means that when I come across people that can't afford to defend themselves, I'm able to offer them a skill set at a reduced fee. I say, hey, you have a court-appointed lawyer, have your attorney contact me.
Okay.
We'll get the job done. So their family may hire me as an independent contractor, but I work hand-in-hand with the attorney so that they get a defense.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
So public defenders, right? What's the negative thing with them? Like, because if, you would think if you got a lawyer to help you work your case, you got a lawyer.
Yes.
Now, but how you speaking it, somebody like you is kind of needed in certain situations with some of these public lawyers. So what's the disconnect there? Caseload. A lot of public defenders have huge caseloads. They're underpaid. It's kind of like teachers, our frontline educators. You're called upon to do a tremendous job of educating our children with their foundation of their education, but you don't compensate them. You have teachers paying for their own supplies in class. How much more so when someone's life is on the line, where it's a matter of liberty or incarceration? So you have someone, let's say you have 10 clients, 5 robberies, a murder charge, a sexual offense charge, or what may have you. Yeah.
You have to give time to these cases. You have to research. You have to familiarize yourself with the facts that call the police to arrest this person, that call the district attorney to file charges, or they call the grand jury to return an indictment against your client. Then you have to go out and you have to find out what were the witnesses saying. Then you have to interview these witnesses to make sure that there aren't any inconsistencies between the police report.
Is that the police job?
You would think so.
Yeah,
Okay, how much money do police officers make? They're not paid, and they do a serious job.
Yeah.
You're talking about putting your life on the line. We're not talking. And I know a lot of police officers have gotten a bad name, but I tell a guy this, like guys that are like really in the streets, guys that are gang banging, whatever. Hey, bro, you go in the mall, you come out, your car's gone. Who are you gonna call? You're not gonna call you guys. You're gonna call the police.
Yes.
This is a fact. So we need police officers. We need good police officers. So a police officer has to be equipped with the ability to do their job. They're not paid. They're not making any money.
Teachers as well. It makes me sad when I hear, when I find out how much teachers make.
Oh, it's horrible. So what we have is we have an attorney who has to muster the evidence to defend their client. But you have to have resources. You have to have the ability to take the time to go do that.
Where did that go wrong at? What part of the system, where did that shift to where it's not enough lawyers to handle all this work?
Oh no, there are ample amount of lawyers. Oh no, there are a lot of lawyers. There are plenty of lawyers.
So what's the issue then? Does everybody want to get paid?
Right. When you're paying an attorney $400 and I think during my case, my attorney fees were like $400. You can't even hire me for $400 for most things. So how much more so an attorney? Now watch this right here. They have student loans they're encumbered with. So they're trying to make money to get these student loans paid off.
Okay.
They did not go to college and then law school to get out here and not make money because you have to pay these student loans back. It was costly.
That's valid.
So what happens is you have attorneys who they need to make money. They haven't built their clientele up. This is not always the case, but this oftentimes it is. And they're on the court appointed list. The judge got mad at my attorney one time and told her that if she, and I want to call it Judge Cowles, and my attorney at the time was Kimberly Crump. This is my trial lawyer. He told her because she was late for a motion. He said, I have a good mind to put you in jail with your client today. And I would love to see how you're going to represent him if you're sitting over there in the Hampton Roads Regional Jail with him. He said, and I have a good mind to pay you $1 for this case. She wasn't making any money to start with. So attorneys know that the purse strings are held by the court to pay them. There's a cap on what they can make for certain cases. So they are disinclined to go and put in 20 hours on a case where they're going to make $400
Yeah, I get
whereas
that.
if you take that same 20 hours and you say $100 an hour, that's a lot of money for most people.
Yes.
$100 an hour, but 20 hours on $2,000, and you have to do all these steps in order to properly defend someone.
That's pretty crazy. That it takes all of that. But I want to come back to this because I want to shift the conversation a little bit. Because I want to touch on this again, but I want to also hear her perspective because you have a different, unique perspective of the same thing kind of with your past. But, okay, let's go back. So, first of all, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Shelia Hallman-Warner.
All right, and so tell me a little bit about yourself. You can give me the blanket, just the rough oversight of who you are in general.
Originally, I'm a Georgia native.
Okay.
I started a career in criminal justice when I was 23 years old.
So how did you get into it, or what was the motivation?
Well, I went to college and I had to find a major.
Okay.
And my father passed away my first semester in college, so I had gone into accounting. How boring was that? One semester, and so my mother was like, they're going to pay you to go to school, so, you might want to plan to stay there a while. I was just going to go it wasn't accounting, 1-year secretarial degree.
Oh, that's even...
Yeah. So when I found out they were going to pay me to go to school, I said, I got to find a major. So criminal justice seemed wide open.
Okay.
You got police, or law enforcement, courts, and corrections.
Any interest in it, or is it just something that was wide open at the moment?
It was wide open, but I found it very interesting as well.
Okay. So, all right, so you went to college, and so
I came out at 23. I began working as a juvenile intake officer.
Okay.
In 2 middle Georgia counties, small counties. At that time, we saw a lot of truancy, vandalism, kids egging school buses. Nothing what it came to be, what I came to work with in Savannah years later.
Okay. So I guess back then, did you actually interact with the kids at all, or like
Yes.
one-on-one?
Yes.
Was it like a counseling thing?
Counseling, informal probation, if I could get them that. Just working with them time they came into the system till their exit. Either they went off to training school or came out.
But I guess, so how was that working with kids?
It was challenging.
And
Very, very challenging.
how so?
But impulsive, they want it now. Inability to delay gratification, as we
Yep.
talk about. I just felt like that they were lost and maybe needed some guidance.
Yes.
I felt like that I could make a difference in their lives to make it better.
What were the kids that you came across? Were they like kids of poverty, or was it like was it from all kinds of walks of life? Or was it?
Pretty much in the small middle Georgia towns, it wasn't a whole lot on my caseload. But when I went to Savannah, quite a few, probably 35 to 50 on a caseload for very violent offenses,
Wow.
carjackings, drive-by shootings. I had an offender that was killed. She was 14 years old by a drive-by shooter.
So, how did you transition from the beginning of that to working in Savannah? What was the process of that?
I applied and became a parole officer out of Savannah. And after that, after about a year and a half, I went back to work with juveniles, where I stayed for 8 years.
Okay.
Counselor in the detention center, ran a short-term drug treatment program, 90-day short-term program for kids that we had several short-term programs in the state. Some were geared toward education, others toward vocations. Mine was substance abuse, but we would get the kids together in groups and have activities, do ropes courses, go out. I've gone out and camped and gone down the river with them, whitewater rafting in programs that they were in up in North Georgia and all.
That's pretty cool.
Things like that.
That's pretty cool. So you had a real intimate relationship with some of these youth.
Very close, yes.
So-
I still have things that some of them made me.
Nice. So all right. So what was the biggest takeaway from all that, working with the kids? Before you went to working with parolees, what was the biggest thing you took away from all of that?
Parenting skills needed. I think, yes.
So a lot of you felt like a lot of the kids, they just lack parenting skills.
Guidance. Yes. Supervision.
Yeah.
Limits. Kids need limits.
Yes, I agree.
And they weren't set.
Yeah, I agree. I was kind of a victim of that myself, because when I was young, my mom just worked 2 jobs all the time. She was always at work. So as much as she wanted to keep us, like parent us more,
Right.
bills and responsibility was at the top of the totem pole.
Right.
So we had the opportunity just to be outside and kind of,
99.9% were with single mothers.
Yes.
And a lot of kids in the household, and they just didn't have the supervision.
Yes. I grew up in a single mother household as well. So unfortunately, it's like that across the board in our culture.
I mean, not to down single mothers. They certainly deserve our respect.
Oh,
But
definitely.
at the same time, it's a hard job,
Yeah,
a
for
hard
sure.
job.
Yeah,
and what we saw was a revolving door. They get into the system, for something very little. Maybe they're stealing ham to eat.
Yeah.
They're getting up. They're being the adults in the home. They're getting their little brothers and sisters up for school and feeding them and getting them on the school bus. The kids I worked with, I saw having to take on parenting roles.
So what do you think the reason for that is? Is it why you think
Drugs, mainly. It was
drugs?
a big crack epidemic during the time.
Okay. What year frame was that?
This was early 80s.
Early 80s. Okay.
I started in the field in 1978.
Okay, so you have interesting perspective, because I'm only 39. So you were around through the crack era. Like, how did outside change? How did society change with the crack era? Like, what was the biggest noticeable change? Because I can only imagine how it was coming through that era and being an adult. I was born in 1984, which is on the tail end of that, but I was a baby, so it missed me kind of. So.
Well, what we began to see, of course, was more and more babies born crack addicted, which was a whole nother issue. But just in terms of services, the services just weren't there, or people chose not to take advantage of them. You can only lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink it. Yeah. And what I saw was people that didn't want to help themselves in many situations.
Were you affected by the crack epidemic?
My mom wound up on it. She had a boyfriend she was dating. Before that, man, my mom was great. This was right before I turned 13. And her boyfriend, he's big dope dealer. He's dead now. And that's actually how she wound up getting involved with it. So I grew up hating it. I have a question for Ms. Warner. we can speak from our community as an African American community. Did you see that crack had an impact on the white community?
No,
No.
no.
Wow.
So why do you think, from your perspective, why do you think that was?
Because crack was cheap to get, easy to get. Cocaine, the white powder, was for the affluent.
Yeah, by design, you think?
Yes. Yes.
That's so. All right, so I want to be real sensitive. So, as a white woman coming through this and all this happening to a lot of black and brown people, I guess how did that leave an effect on you in your universe? Because I mean, of course, it's different universe. Like, you know, what I mean, my father, my mother, we come from different. I'm not sure how you were raised or what you were raised around, but how did it differ from what you've seen in the system?
Okay. When I was in high school, we were segregated.
Interesting.
I went through integration in the 11th and 12th grades of high school.
That is interesting.
And I saw people that were, quote unquote, my friends, wealthier, that went off to private school because they didn't want a part of that. In terms of, what's my train of thought?
No, I mean, it's just the culture, I guess. What was the culture like during that time? Because
Okay.
I can only imagine, like, being in 11th and 12th grade, and then segregation happened. So you went through all of your years of school in a segregated environment?
Yes, up until the 11th grade.
Wow.
That's pretty interesting. So, all right, so I talk about this with people a lot. Like, there's a lot of commonalities in, like, our cultures. Certain things are just, it's undiagnosed traumas, certain things, certain biases that we have against certain groups. And you never, as a kid, you know, it just get echo chambers, you know. You'll hear your family members say, oh, don't go over there because this is going to happen to you.
Yep.
And so on and so forth. So from your perspective, because you went through a time of segregation when you were a teenager. So was it like the people around you, was it just a normal thing to be racist, or is it something that was accepted among people?
Pretty much accepted. I mean, you know, I wasn't raised to be racist or anything like that. When the schools integrated, my parents didn't make a big deal out of it. You know, we went on. It was quite
normal,
nice. Yeah, I was 11th and 12th grades. I mean, you know, they were funny. I mean, we had funny friends.
Yeah.
But when I went to Savannah, it was, you know, quite a few years had gone by. It was quite different in terms of the culture there.
Okay.
And as I said, a lot of the kids that I worked with were from single parent families. I can remember going to court one time, and I had a kid. The principal called me Mr. Speed. His wife was Anna Speed. She was in her third generation at the juvenile detention center, seeing kids
come through
the system.
Wow.
So he calls me up, Hallman, Craig's over here exposing himself. You're going to have to come over here and get him.
Is it spokesman?
Exposing himself.
Exposing himself. Okay, yeah.
And so I said, I'll call the police. I'm not coming over there to fool with Craig. They can transfer him to detention. So Craig goes on to, and already, you know, an after, quote unquote, aftercare, juvenile parole. So I'm pick his mom up and go to court. You know, I'm talking to her about Craig's childhood. I'm like, what about Craig's father? Does he know who his father is? He ever had any her exact words to me were, he's one of those betwixt and between. And that's exactly what she said to me. He's one of those betwixt and between.
So what does that mean?
She didn't know who the father was. She'd had so many men come in and out of her life. And I saw that I mentioned with the 14-year-old that took a, you know, drive-by shooting. Her little sister was terribly abused by the men. Her mom was a crackhead, and she was terribly abused by the men coming in and out of the home. Those are the kinds of things that I saw.
Yeah, it seemed like the system is filled with people with past traumas just like that. You know what I mean? And I hope that we're able to attack that issue one of these days with real, you know what I mean, with real effort to avert a lot of situations with kids that can be averted. I think so.
Right.
I do want to say thank you because I admire people that work with youth for any kind of reasons. And for you to stick it out that long and then to work with the pro leagues and then go back to working with kids, I value teachers. For me, I value teachers at the top of the totem pole.
Well, thank you.
People
And
that.
after that's when I went back into the institution, the adult institution.
So yeah, so all right, but yeah, I want to say thank you first and foremost. Working with kids, I admire people like you.
Thank you.
And especially people from our culture. So it means a lot.
Because there was such a disproportionate representation of minorities, in our facilities.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So all right, so going from you went to working with pro leagues now. So how was that process?
It was an easy transition. I liked being a parole officer because we had a lesser caseload.
Okay.
My limit was 35. I had a lot of investigative reports to write, home visits, pre-release employment and housing. And it was never a dull moment. So I enjoyed it.
So what did you learn from that process about the system? Because, when you sit in certain positions within the system, you start seeing certain things that you never saw before.
Right. I basically realized that the shots that people lacked in their lives, that they just didn't have and I don't want to say that they couldn't have made something out of it. They, I guess, chose not to, but I could also see how difficult and how frustrating the process must be.
Yeah, I can only. Is it like a break of? Is it like you lose your hope? I feel like
Exactly. And when you lose your hope, it's all gone.
You just give up on yourself and all. So I know you've been in jail for for a long time. So I'm pretty sure you've seen guys leave and come back.
There was a revolving door syndrome that plagues the system. But here is why. There are certain prisons, like I was sent to Colorado on the Interstate Compact. And out there in Colorado, it was mandatory that you went to school. Like those guys that didn't have GEDs, they had to go to school. Mandatory. If you didn't, you were punished. Now, that right there is a novel idea for prison. If you don't go and get an education, you get punished. This is how you keep guys from coming back to prison, because they understood the economic impact of having guys go in and out the system. They understood that it costs X amount of dollars to house this person every year, whereas when they're home, they can take care of themselves. So if we give them the tools that they need while they're inside, so they can be gainfully employable when they're outside, they're less likely to come back in. Guys who obtain an education while they're in there are less of a management problem because they are engaged in school. Once your brain frees of this ability that you can't think, you begin to be a thinker. Once you read a book for the first time and someone has taught you the fundamentals of reading, and then you can sit down by yourself and you can actually make it through a book, the world opens up to you. So when the world opens up to you, your mind is no longer limited into this thing where you have this mentality, I was telling this earlier, I just did what I had to do. So education in the system works and it stops the revolving door process. But society is more focused on punishment than it is on rehabilitation.
Yes, I agree.
It's the lock 'em up, throw away the key mentality.
Well, we've had that pendulum swing back and forth. We are back there now. At one time, it was rehabilitation, or designed to be. In the 70s when they brought the psychologists in and paraprofessionals and all of that. But typically it's just espoused, lip service only.
I want to hear about that. So you said they bring in psychiatrists in the 70s?
What is it? I'm sorry.
You said they bring in psychiatrists in the 70s?
Yes. And psychologists, paraprofessionals. When they went to what they call the, oh my gosh, I used to know it. The positive approach to criminology, the positivistic approach, as opposed to the classical approach, which is.
Yeah, I never knew that they even. I didn't know that they went to it with that approach at all. Like my purview of the system of that, it's always been a tool used to keep us incarcerated or enslaved per se. That's how it was passed down through me. I didn't even know that there was even a time that they even tried to.
Right, in the early 70s. In the early 70s, the focus shifted to rehabilitation. And then it just goes back. It's so many different factors that depend and shape the mindset of an individual that's going in to work, like in the prisons, and how they treat the offenders and things like that. Because I've had them ask me, do you train your officers to treat us inhumane. Like, no, I don't. That's not how I teach.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is just getting the older mentality out,
Yes.
and the ones that, that have a little more empathy, if you will, and see themselves, as I used to explain it, a human services oriented model as opposed to custody oriented.
Yeah. I can see the mental shift between the two being bad on the person on the receiving end of that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, that's
Right. And it makes a big difference in the way you run your institution in terms of your outcome.
Yeah.
For decreased staff out, sick leave, calling in sick, and things like that.
I don't think a lot of people have that perspective of Georgia in the 70s even trying to rehabilitate offenders. You know what I mean? People in jail. Like, my brain was screaming like, hey,
Well, I'm not saying they did it in Georgia in the 70s. Well, in the 70s, all over the country was the model that was to be implemented based on that theory of biological, sociological, and psychological, and that's what they focus on, biopsychosocial.
Okay. That's pretty interesting. Go ahead.
I have to say this right here. I'm a former active duty Marine, Air Force, so you understand this right here. When I'm in my dress blues, I'm looking good. Combat ready if necessary, but I look good. I'm really not trying to fight right now. I look good. I don't mess my dress blues up.
Yeah.
When I'm in my combat fatigues, it's a different mindset. When you go into the system now, they dress officers in combat fatigues. You're coming to work. They no longer wear the regular trousers. They're wearing cargo pants. They're no longer wearing the button downs. They're wearing polo shirts because it gives them more freedom of movement. But it sets a mental tone when you walk through the prison gates when you're in combat fatigues. You're wearing combat boots versus wearing core frames. So you're already in combat mode. They're putting 38 millimeter guns in control booths. Now imagine these two guys over here in a physical altercation. They're fighting each other. This officer is sitting up there taking pop shots. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. Those slugs are like that big. They're shooting guys with high velocity wood blocks. So when you come in, you're trained. We listen to them coming into the unit, and they train with these things right there inside the unit. So the officers are already geared towards combat mode. Now, when I went to Colorado, and I have to keep using this example because that's where I was, they had their CERT team, the team that was certified, that was trained in case of acts of vandalism, they had to come in and suppress it.
Yeah.
But the officer that generally worked around the floor, I asked the officer one day, I said, why are you all so nice? I was taken aback by it. I had never had a correctional officer treat me with this much kindness. I'm like, why are you so nice? There had to be something odd going on in Colorado for them to be so courteous. When you went to segregation, they treated you better.
That's interesting.
That blew my mind. They said, here's why. If we treat you bad back here, you're going to get out there and want to get one of us back. You're going to get out there and not want to comply with the rules and regulations because you're angry about how you were treated back here. I'm like, wow, they get this. And I was blown away in a great way, but I was blown away nonetheless. You have to put officers, you have to put the staff into a mental mindset when they walk through the gates.
And communication skills.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Interpersonal communication
I can
skills.
only
It's a lot of the focus in the training, And two, the training of the officer, their mindset's going to influence the training of the
prisoner, sure.
of the officers coming through
Oh,
of
yeah.
how they're going to go in and do their job.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So, I heard something the other day about prisons being the towns that they put prisons in, and the prison becomes the whole economy of the area. So you got uncles and and fathers and sons. Everybody's working.
Whole pseudo families.
All working in the prison. So, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Let's. I'm glad you asked that question. That was a great question. I like that question. I love that question. Most of the time that they build these prisons in are economically devastated. In order to bolster the economy of a place like that, you have to do one or two things. You have to produce goods or services. Let's look at Southwest Virginia. Southwest Virginia was declared economically devastated. They were coal miners. So you take these coal miners, the Environmental Protection Agency basically shut down the coal mines out there. They're left with what? They have a lot of land. They are socially isolated from the rest of the state. They are up in the, what region mountains are those called? Appalachian Mountains, yes. And they are socially isolated. What goods do they produce out there? They were producing coal. What services do they produce? They don't produce services out there. So they began to court large corporations, say, listen, we have large swaths of land out here. We will give you this land to come build a factory out here. So the people went out there and they looked where the roadways were shabby because there's no money out there. They don't have a large tax base to fix the roadways. So the waterworks are about non-existent. There were so many offices at Red Onion Water and Ridge when I got there initially in 2002 that still had outhouses. We couldn't believe this.
That sounds crazy.
So they still had outhouses back then, and a lot of them they got water from wells. So they did not have the infrastructure to support large corporations coming out there. So some genius said, okay, and this is why you have to love the way the mind works. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. They began to scare the Virginia populace. They say, hey, we have guys who are coming in here, they're getting out and they're doing horrible things. One of my friends I played football with, his uncle, Leroy Coker, got out on parole, drove on a bike through Food Lion parking lot, and chopped the white lady in her head with a hatchet and killed her. No reason. Wow. He became the poster child to why we just need to get rid of parole and why we need to have truth in sentencing and why we need to have supermax prisons. I don't know how the supermax prison came into effect, but he became the poster child for it. It scared people. Now you say, hey, we need to build these prisons out here, to build these supermax prisons out here. So they hired a guy, I cannot remember his name right now. Virginia DOC hired a guy to do a survey, to do an audit, to determine whether or not Virginia needed a maximum and supermax prisons. He said his determination was that not only did Virginia not need a supermax or a maximum, it didn't even need the high security level that it already had. Because Virginia prisoners are very, very, very unlikely to attack a prison officer. Instances of attacks in Virginia were very low. He said, in fact, it was the opposite way around. The officers are known to use excessive force against prisoners far more than the opposite way around. They brushed him off. They built the prisons. They went on a prison building boom. They built Red Onion and Water Ridge. One was 75 million, one was 85 million. That was just in building. Now, the annual payroll for Red Onion and Water Ridge is $300 million. No, sorry, $30 million. Do the math. Those two prison loans, so you had Red Onion, Water Ridge, King Mountain, Pocahontas, Green Rock. That was 5 prisons right there in that small region. Look at the state. If you look at the state from left to right, here's where you have the Appalachian Mountains. Here's where the majority of the prisons were over here on the eastern shore rather. As they begin to shut these prisons down and begin to shift guys to these prisons that they don't need the maximum and the supermaxes, they built 2 supermaxes. Keep that in mind. They don't exist there. They're still there, but the criteria shifted. So you have these supermaxes out here. And what happens to the money in the state? All the money that was going to these prisons and the people that worked in these prisons out here now shifted over here to the left. That money that they're getting in comes from where? The state, the capital, from Richmond. So they were able to count us at one time as part of their census. So when they're saying, oh, well, we have 50 murderers out here. Well, the reality is, no, you don't. You had no murders out here. The murders actually happened in these cities over here. So state and federal funding was being given to these prisons, to these cities, these counties, to combat murders when they didn't have a single murder out there that had anything to do with the guys that were there. They were just housed there. They've since outlawed that. Now, the money that they're making over here in the prison, so all the family members you're talking about, so if uncle's the warden, friend's the assistant warden, the captain is this guy, and then it's gonna be very easy to get in if you're in that family, right?
Yeah, nephews,
full of nepotism.
Nepotism, that's right, that's my word. Absolutely. So now what do they do when they get paid? They pay their bills. They pay taxes. So now the city coffers, the county coffers are now filling up with money. They're able to improve the roadways. They're able to have better schools. They're able to have better waterworks. They're able now to improve the infrastructure of where they live.
So it's a system that gets them locked in.
Yes, absolutely. So do you think that they're going to be rehabilitation minded? Yeah. When they know that in order to have a job, there's secure job security, they need bodies in the prison. So what they began to do was they started treating those prisons like hotels. Virginia had one of the hugest interstate compact agreements. They were bringing people from
Making
everywhere.
about $65,000 a year, bringing in from
Connecticut,
offenders from out of state, from the Northeast.
Per person?
Connecticut paid Virginia.
Total, per year,
Okay.
about $65,000 a year.
Connecticut paid Virginia $200 million to house 500 prisoners for like 10 years, something like that. $200 million. They wound up killing two of those guys, and Connecticut snatched their prisoners back out of here. But Mexico, Wyoming, Virgin Islands, Virginia, Red Onion and Water Ridge became hotels. They were never meant for us to start with. They was always meant to bring in this out-of-state money. So the short version is there was an economic reason behind building these prisons out there. They knew that in order to get money into these economically devastated areas, they had to convince the populace to build these prisons so that they could do a economic shift of the funds from the Eastern Shore out there. They began closing prisons down over here. Now, who worked in the majority of staff members that worked in these prisons over here on the East Coast of the state? What color were they?
I'm assuming white.
No, they were African American. African American staff most of the prisons over here.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
I didn't know that.
So what do you think happened when those prisons closed? They lost their jobs. There only so many places you can transfer to. Then you have to be able to commute to and from.
Yeah.
So they begin to lose their job, and their money shifted. I cannot remember who it was. Right now, I can't call it. We can search this. He said, if there's ever to be a rising again of the South, it must start in Southwest Virginia. What is so important about Southwest Virginia? Southwest Virginia is where the treasury set for the Union. I'm sorry, for the Confederacy. They said if there's ever to be a resurgence of the South, it must start in Southwest Virginia. This is not by happenstance. Getting money back over there to these people and back in their coffers and giving them the ability to put their politician in the office is not by happenstance. Do you know where the chairman of the parole board comes from? Southwest Virginia. He comes from Dickinson. He comes from Wise County. When I was at Red Onion State Prison, this man charged me 6 or 7 times with crimes against officers. I represented myself pro se against him, and I beat every charge. They tell so many lies. I was smacking them in court, man, having a ball. He went from the district attorney to the circuit court judge, Chadwick Dotson. So Mr. Dotson, when he got on the bench, he had another case against me pending. He was going to try to hear the case. I said, sir, I moved for him to recuse himself. Short version, he did. I had to argue the motion. Yeah. He recused himself. Now he has gone from district attorney, circuit court judge. So I think he went to the federal bench, and now he is the chairman of the parole board. This man that was responsible for keeping people in prison, prosecuting crimes, now is the person that's be responsible for letting people out of prison on parole. So
that's pretty crazy.
No. This is deliberate. This is not by happenstance. He does not hold a position he holds by happenstance. This was very deliberate. So the shifting of the wealth, getting their people in a position, and then placing them where they want them to, so they can continue to maintain the status quo.
And manipulate the system
right.
to their will.
Now watch this right here. And we can count. I want to get to Miss Warner's main reason for why we're here today.
For sure.
Because these things, it's a reason why. Because we're talking about a shifting of money, a shifting of wealth to the detriment of others. So.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So back to you. All right. So you went from. Because I want to get to what we're here for today for. So you went from the parolee, went back to juveniles.
Yes.
And you did. How long did you stay there?
8 years.
8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then what
in different positions. I went to. My mother passed away, so I left the facility for a few months, and when I went back into the field, I went as a counselor at the prison.
Okay. So you went from working with parolees, and then
back to juveniles.
Then back to juveniles.
And then the counselor in the prison.
Okay.
And from there, the mental health center, a liaison for child and adolescent at the behavioral mental health center.
So you have been involved with the prison system and judicial system for since your 20s. So
23.
Since
23.
college.
I worked 15 years in the field prior to teaching.
Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit, because I want to have the conversation what we're here today for. So after all this, you ended up as a professor.
Yes.
So how did you become a professor?
really just fell into it, honestly.
Does it happen like that?
Yeah, it really did. It really did. My husband, we were in Savannah, and he had an opportunity to go to work in Southwest Virginia, as a matter of fact. And so we moved, and after, from there, I became the director. Well, actually, an adoption social worker initially. Didn't know a thing about adoptions. Okay. And you talk about the system.
Yeah.
20, it was, oh my goodness, 25% of your income to adopt a quote unquote HWI, healthy white infant. And then there were different guidelines if it was 4 groups, sibling, black or biracial,
so
disabilities.
So that changed the amount of money you would get when you said the 25%?
Yeah, how much it cost them to adopt.
Ah.
Yes, it cost them more to adopt a quote-unquote healthy white infant than black or biracial, special needs, sibling group, and there was one more. Just because everybody wanted healthy white infants,
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So I learned a lot there. And after 6 weeks of that, they were desperate. I became a director of the Children's Home Society in West Virginia. I had 30 staff, family aides, and case managers. Our role was to, quote unquote, preserve the family. Mm-hmm. I saw 3 children die in foster care in the course of a year. An 18-month-old that fell out of a high chair, hit her head. Another one that was just pushed down the steps, beaten unmercifully before they went to church. It was a sad situation. And my secretary came in one day and she said, Bluefield State College is advertising for a criminal justice professor. And I said, oh, okay. So I applied for it. We were down to 3. One had a degree in law. Mm-hmm. Another one was law enforcement, who happened to be a black male, which ended up in the front of a paper from California, the whiting of a black institution, talking about that they hired a white female with a lesser degree. And I had to correct that. So at any rate.
So hold on. So you said that when they hired you over the black man, that they questioned
my degree.
Oh, your degree.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more so was it about your race more than it was a degree?
I think so, yes.
Because it was a BCU.
Right.
HBCU.
Okay.
But the
HBCU.
whole bottom line is his whole experience was law enforcement. He had no experience in corrections.
Okay, that makes sense.
I was the only one of the 3 that had experience in corrections.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. All right, so you...
So I started August of 1994.
Okay. And so how did that go?
Quite an adjustment going from working in the field to academe.
Yeah, I was about to say teaching students to... So you're dealing with I guess...
Mostly right out of high school. Some non-traditional students. In fact, I had some wonderful recovery coaches that are at the mental health center now. Right. All my students are successful in the field. Probation officers, parole officers, magistrate judges.
So how was it being a teacher?
I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah?
It's
was
passion.
It fulfilling?
Mm-hmm, very much so.
What about it? What about it? What was your why? What was that thing about teaching that?
Just shaping young minds, helping them to understand what they're going into, because it's not a field for everyone.
Yeah.
I've taken them on tours of the prison before and come back and had a girl change her major.
I bet.
Yeah. But at least she recognized it before she got in there,
Yeah.
And I've had students that I've heard have been escorted out of the prison for bringing in cigarettes or, something that they knew better, that they've heard for 4 years. You don't go in and do this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, all right. So before it went all left, I guess. Well, let's just go fast forward there. So what happened? What happened?
Well, it's quite complex.
You started at the beginning.
For 22 years, I built my program. I did not pay attention to politics on campus. I wasn't just a professor that came in and did classes and left. I took students to all around the country to the American Jail Association conferences for 15 consecutive years.
Nice.
I presented at conferences all over the country. We toured Alcatraz twice. So I can't even remember. They had a great cultural experience because none of them, many of them, never even been out of the state of West Virginia. Some of them, McDowell County, 30 minutes down the road.
Small towns, yeah.
Yes. So I wasn't just, I was a very active professor. Had the Criminal Justice Club. We had the kick butts with the float every year, every year. Built them in my garage.
Yeah.
They corrupted my son, telling him, points for this and points for that.
Yeah.
So after 22 years, I went into a faculty meeting. I seldom went. And they were talking about some questionable things, appearance of impropriety, lack of transparency with funding, things of this nature. So it was just very combustible time. In April of 2015, the campus went into chaos. We had a president that came in 2012. We began to experience significant decrease in enrollment over a 6-year period from 2012 to the end of her tenure in 2018, a 40% decline in enrollment.
Was it just that's one person coming in?
Yes.
Was she the reason for the?
A lot of it.
Okay.
And we felt that she was.
Okay.
We'd not seen these issues before.
And this is a HBCU. Was this a white woman or black woman? Just trying to
White.
Okay.
Who never had held even a provost position, a vice president position. Wow. She had a degree in Spanish.
So do you have any information on how she even got that job or how she ended up in that position? Just
politics.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question? Can you give us, you said you went to a meeting and there were instances you felt of impropriety. Can you give us an example of what they done?
Well, let me just back up for a minute related to that. I'm trying to remember if that. No, that was before. That was actually fall of 2014.
Okay.
So we come back spring of 2015 is when the campus goes into an uproar.
Okay.
And that was over. Number one, her contract was coming up for renewal.
Okay.
She knew that we all wanted her gone, so she started holding meetings on campus. She held 4 meetings. I attended 3 of them just to see what people were saying, if everyone was on the same page and realized what a mess the school was.
Yeah.
It was we ended up, what got my attention really, a couple of things, but the Chronicle of Higher Education did an article, and it's reported errant reply all results in the resignation of the Board of Governing Chair. Basically, what happened was Student Support Services had a long laundry list of issues for students.
Okay.
Dorms, mold in the rooms. It was an old Ramada Inn hotel, miles from the campus. It was horrible.
Okay.
And so things started going on, concerns with all of that. But what his response was, and when he got the email about the concerns, what happened is he accidentally hit reply all. And it said, "This sounds like a bitch session to me. Let Bob handle the mob." And it was on. 40 of us.
And about who was he?
The chair of the governing board.
The chair of the governing board, okay.
Yes, he said, "This sounds like a bitch session to me. Let Bob handle the mob." Bob was the vice chair of the governing board. He soon became the chair because this person had to resign for saying that.
And that comment was in regards to the laundry list of complaints that students had?
That Student Support Services had.
Okay, student support services.
Okay.
Yes. So about 40 of us marched into the governing board meeting when that hit the press, and he was forced to resign that afternoon. We all went into the Board of Governors meeting, and we had one spokesperson totally ignored. They didn't care. Dean got up and resigned with a folder like this. He said, "You see this? This is full of complaints on one professor, and I'm not allowed to discipline him. I've put in my resignation. I'm leaving." Nothing ever, nothing that we ever did, got attention. In fact, they went further and further to shut us out. They changed the bylaws of the governing board meetings for relate to public comment. That used to be that at the conclusion of a governing board meeting, 30 minutes allotted to persons 3 minutes apiece to speak.
Got rid of it.
They came into, and I started going to governing board meetings.
Yeah.
And they came in and they said, well, we just learned that we have to have an open comment period. That wasn't true, they knew it. So they said, we got to decide if we're going to put it at the beginning or the middle or the end. And they started laughing. And they said, hell, we don't have to allow anyone to speak.
Wow.
And they changed it that you come in and you have to sign up to speak. And you're the second on the agenda. So after the meeting, you don't have an opportunity to make a comment or anything.
Wow.
It was just totally closed.
So they kind of like insulated the whole governing body of the whole school.
Absolutely.
Okay. And that's what drove one of you guys wanting to get involved and getting more.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So we went into that governing board meeting. She wanted, when it came for a renewal of her contract, she wanted 3 years. They wanted to give her a year. So they ended up giving her 2. Right now, we were experiencing 40% decline in enrollment, a $1.93 million deficit.
Whoa.
This relates back to changing the seal of an HBCU to the tune of $250,000.
Explain.
It gets better.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Against the recommendation of the subcontractor.
Wow.
All that is in meeting minutes.
How much did the seal cost? How much was the seal?
$250,000, $250,000. And what they did was tweak it. If you've got kids that find the difference in the picture,
Right.
that's what it's about 8 things a group of us identified.
But what was the money like? How do you justify? So was it like $300,000 to change all the seals on the campus to put new seals?
That $250,000 was strictly for the design.
Oh, wow.
Yes, that has nothing to do with all the banners that they went out and changed to B State.
Wow.
So it wasn't just $250,000 for the design.
Graphics.
Who was the person that got that contract?
Oh, that's a good part. The same one that's gotten it for 20 years, every contract on the campus. Thompson and Litton engineering firm, they were the contractor. Thompson subcontracted out the seal portion to his son,
Wow.
the Journey Group, but he actually said, we do not recommend changing the seal etched in stone of historical significance.
Who said
Etched
that?
in stone.
I'm sorry, who said that?
The subcontractor.
His son?
Yeah.
But his son got the money, though.
Yeah. But he recommended against changing it based
he
on
did.
historical significance. But
But
they
he took the contract.
of course.
Yeah,
Of course.
still did.
Yes. But they have gotten the contracts for all of them. I've seen people, fired while they were on medical leave because they speak out at a governing board meeting while they're on the board and say, how is it that this one company gets all the contracts?
And then they get rid of them. Wow.
Yes. If you open your mouth, you're gone.
Wow. So how do you fight that? How do you combat that?
Phew.
Like what's the first step? How do we? I don't know. I don't even know how to articulate it. But what do you do?
I don't know. That's a very good question. And basically what I found is power politics and the pervasive culture of toxic masculinity is what I was subjected to. Police escort out as a tenured professor. Well, I'm still on the payroll.
All right, so I want to get to that,
Sorry.
of you being outed. So what led up to that?
Okay, there's several things again were going on at that time with her on campus and just the campus in a mess. But at one of the hold on one second. At one of the first meetings, people noticed a change in my demeanor. because I was very upset because there were 3 of us for 22 years in the criminal justice program. We were the criminal justice program.
Okay.
Law enforcement, courts, and corrections. Our law enforcement professor was leaving after 37 years. We'd been together 22, the 3 of us.
That's a good run.
So they really decided they wanted us all gone, is what happened. And they really played a lot of dirty games in filling the position. They took away all of our autonomy as criminal justice professors and who would fill the position. I had a chair from another college, a criminal justice chair. They said he wasn't qualified.
Wow.
And didn't interview him. I was really upset about the program because I saw where it was going, and I knew what I'd built and worked over 20 years to build.
I could imagine.
And our reputation, I put that school on the map across the country.
And it was just like they were tearing it apart.
Did not care. Didn't care about the students.
Was it power or money?
Both.
Both.
I would say both.
So is this what got you kind of interested and start going to these meetings so you can see what's behind the thought process or what was behind the action? Did you want to go hear the thought processes that caused them to do that they were doing to your department?
We went to the meetings because, we were just discussing all of the chaos on campus. Mm-hmm. But then I brought up, I have trying to protect the integrity of my program here, and I'm being stopped from doing it. And at any rate, a lot of it with me came down to no pay. I was not.
They stopped paying.
I was not compensated adequately.
Wow.
Well below my male colleagues. 15 to 20 grand below my male colleagues.
For your whole tenure there, for your whole 22?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes. So what really began to get my hours, I began to struggle financially. I was building my program. I was happy. I didn't really pay much attention.
Yeah, to that part. Yeah.
So when I started and realized, how little money I was making, I just was, and then look and know that there was no rhyme or reason for anyone's salary. It was strictly arbitrary and capricious, and who you were and what you did. So my salary was a main issue. The program became an issue. But then when the seal came on the table.
That money, see all that money just being wasted.
And against the recommendation of a subcontractor, I reported waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yes.
Oh, you reported.
And I became a target in 2015. I'll back up. At one of those meetings, faculty were leaving, staff was coming in. We had one employee. He was 78 years old, a telecommunications specialist. He was never on campus. He had contracts with the public schools, and he was working his $300,000 business while he was on payroll for $75,000.
What did he do? What did he do on campus? No, what did he actually do on campus?
Nothing. He'd come through every morning and get his cup of coffee and rub the ladies on the shoulders and Mr. Suave and debonair. So I was at a table when he came in, and the guy I was sitting with, he's a guy that they fired on medical leave. He said, "Sheila, look at this." And he gave me this piece of paper, and it was out of the paper, the daily paper, and it said T for Teachers. And his son was down there nominated for T for Teachers.
Okay.
His son was also an employee at the school, working all day, but he's off teaching. Okay? So,
so they just
I turned around to the evaluator, and I said, I pulled a Brittany. I said, how can the president allow this man to make $75,000 a year on this campus? He's not even on it. He's off running his business.
She torpedoed her career right there.
I sealed my fate that day.
I can imagine.
He stepped in between me and the guy, and he said, "You know what? You need to shut the hell up about something you don't know what you're talking about and get on out of here." And I said, number one, I wasn't speaking with you. Number two, what are you going to do, bully me like I've seen you do to people on this campus for 20 years? Well, he walked out bullying me. I'm ending up telling him to get out of my face. He ends up filing a complaint on me. I'm the one that ends up getting punished, and nothing to him, and I'm like, okay, so this happened in this, and
Sound like the good old boy club. That's
Oh,
what it sounds
absolutely.
like.
oh, absolutely. So I had the special criminal special investigation guy. I went round and round with him like oil and water. You didn't see nothing here. You didn't see nothing here. So I was calling all above his head, and he called me. He was mad. He said, I'm sending my senior investigator down there. So he came in and met with me for about an hour and a half. I said, the only question, no, we haven't gotten to this part yet. I'm like, the only question you need to ask yourself is why they would press criminal charges against a criminal justice professor.
Yeah.
So this is what happened. What happened with the telecommunications person in April of 15.
Okay.
It was hearings, grievances against me all through the end of September. Steady letters of warning for one thing or another I did. All threatening termination.
Just picking at you over the
All threatening termination. So I went into class. It was August of 2016, first night of class from after summer break. I traveled a lot during the summer. I carry a stun gun and pepper spray. So I walked into class. There were only 7 students there, all 400 level, about to graduate the next semester. I've had them for 4 years, and I'm pulling my items out, my book, to set up for class, and I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize this was in here. This is what I carry for self-protection, and we're going to talk about self-protective measures later on in the semester. And so I pulled it out, and I reared it back, stun gun. They tried to count 13, 15, 16, 17 times it went off. It's not a laser. I mean, a taser, a stun gun. Requires direct contact.
Yeah, direct contact, so you were just doing it kind of just in the air.
It was behind me. And they're probably to that white desk, the first desk, for me. So I reared it back, and then I'm like, oh, and don't piss me off. I got pepper spray.
Okay. So what was wrong?
A couple weeks later, I get a text from the guy in security, my former student from 20 years earlier. He said, I need to see you. I said, I'm in class. I'll text you when I get out. Before I got out of class, I pulled up in the parking lot. It was in another building. And he approached me. He said, we don't want to have to arrest you for a felony on campus. I said, excuse me. And he repeated it, for possession of a deadly weapon. So I said, this is what happens to whistleblowers. And he said, it's just a small fine and we'll keep it quiet. He said, I've talked to the magistrate, and she says she knows you, and it'll be a small fine. And I said, I guess she does. I had her in class for 4 years. And so I go down there, and she said, what in the world's going on?
Oh, she didn't even know?
No.
Wow.
She said, what is going on? And she said, are you here to pay your fine? I said, how long did you have me in class? No. And I want a jury trial.
Yeah.
So the union gave me an attorney. They weren't going to give me an attorney, but I told them, look, this calls for up to 30 days in jail, and I'll sit every bit of it before I pay $1 fine. Yeah. So he reared back, cut right to the chase. Why are they really after you?
Yeah.
I said, for reporting waste, fraud, and abuse. And I said, they changed their story 4 times. First of all, it was a student in the class. Then it was just a student. Then it was, it ended up being an employer at the other site. I had students at another site, which is why it's recorded, which is why I had the video showing 32 seconds of that stun gun in and out of my bag.
32 seconds.
32 seconds.
And they tried to bring criminal charges against you.
They did.
Felony criminal charges.
They tried to, and then, we reduced it to disturbing a school, which disturbing a school, is willful and deliberate intent to disturb a school. And
And might I add, it's a fireable offense. Even that misdemeanor would have given them
justification
to fire her, to terminate.
What they had calculated was they would charge me, I would pay the fine, and that's grounds for termination. I just pled guilty to disturbing school.
Yep.
That was their whole. That's exactly the way they thought it was going to go down.
So they wanted. It seemed like they wanted to start a paper trail.
Yes.
And just have some kind of paper trail to justify. Like
They were building up to fire me.
Yes. Yeah. Sound like.
They were stacking my file to fire me. I applied for promotion 3 times in 4 years. Never has anyone been denied for promotion but me.
That's crazy.
Keep in mind that a stun gun is defined as a non-lethal weapon. So charging her for possession or utilizing a deadly weapon.
Yeah, for a non-lethal weapon.
It's legally frivolous.
So how'd you fight back?
Well, I filed a grievance.
Okay.
After it was dismissed, I filed a grievance, and I had a 3.5-hour grievance hearing. Okay. Level 1 grievance hearing, about 7 students came to testify voluntarily. About 7. The ones that were in the class when it happened. They were very upset at what was being done to me.
I can imagine.
Yes.
Did their words hold any weight?
No, this is what I'm about to tell you. After they testified, and this is in writing in a level 1 grievance hearing that's filed in court, their testimony was dismissed on 4 factors. 1, inability to perceive and communicate, a lack of honesty, a lack of trustworthiness. This is what they said about the students.
Wow.
In dismissing their testimony.
Wow.
Again.
Yes, and they first tried to,
frivolous.
try to get them to say I forced them to be there, that I was withholding their grades, or they knew that they would affect their grade. They're like, no. They're like, have you got to have her again for school? Yes, ma'am. I look forward to it.
So, but how did this is in court, right?
This is in a grievance hearing at that point.
Okay, this is a
That
grievance
was
hearing
level 1.
in the school. Okay, now okay.
And
I'll
then
follow
it goes on, you have to exhaust those administrative remedies.
Okay.
So level 2 was mediation, which was not a success.
Okay.
So the day that they got the notice that mediation was unsuccessful, I got another letter, a warning letter, written up for 5 years of performance, a lack of performance for 5 years in assessments.
But it just so-called surfaced after this happens.
Yes, and I thought, well, it sounded like to me you need to speak with the dean. That's a supervisory issue.
Yeah, 5 years.
So,
For 5, they claim for 5 years. She's not doing her job for 5 years. Then
that
it
was
surfaces.
2017 of May. That was 3 weeks before I filed a pro se federal lawsuit for discrimination and retaliation in hostile work environment.
Okay.
And I included that dean in it. And I told her, you've just earned and 13 defendants were served on campus by the U.S. Marshals
So
in June of that year, 17.
did that play out yet, or is it still?
Oh, well, that ended me in state court. The federal magistrate really dropped the ball. She said that I disturbed the school because I had caused an investigation to have to be done.
Listen to that.
No one spoke to me before I was threatened with arrest. None of the students had been spoken with about anything in the class. Lost my train of thought.
What you about to say?
The mere fact, think about this. The mere fact that you walk in a store, you did something, not illegal, not against the rules and regulations, not against policy, you did something, they investigated, which is their job. They did their due diligence. Mm-hmm. But now, when you're found not guilty, because the charges were dismissed, right? Mm-hmm. So the charges were dismissed against her. She stood her ground as she was supposed to. So now the magistrate judge says, oh yeah, but there was a disturbance because they investigated.
You disturbed the school because you caused an investigation to have to be done. You willfully discharged the weapon.
Right.
Now, I filed a court of appeal saying, it's willful and deliberate intent to disturb a school. But, of course, they took it at first, and then when they got another response, it was like, oh, you filed this late, so we're done. Man. But from level 2, unsuccessful mediation, my last letter of warning, May of 17, they got served with the federal lawsuit. In September of 17, we had a 3.5-hour grievance hearing in Charleston, and the administrative law judge, he reamed them a new one.
Wow.
He said, what is this all about?
Wow.
Why is this mountain out of a molehill?
Yeah.
And he called out one of the witnesses. He said, "Put that notebook away. You have changed your story 4 times."
Wow.
And then when the director of safety and security got up there, he said, I made the wrong charge. I should have stuck with the felony.
Wow.
He said, I asked her to, I told her we'd keep it quiet because I didn't want it all out on Facebook and everything.
Yeah. I could imagine it being public.
So after that 3.5-hour hearing, I had the goods because I got the recording where he is admitting that he had to do something, and it's priceless. So then an attorney took my case because the malicious prosecution, she left me leeway on that to file in state court, the federal judge. But what she did was dismiss my retaliation claim with prejudice, which means it couldn't be refiled.
Oh.
So now in 2022, I filed another federal pro se lawsuit for violation of constitutional rights, Section 1983, non-prisoner.
Okay.
That is sitting there for a year now, but 3 federal magistrates recused themselves, and 1 dismissed the retaliation with prejudice, which means I'm about to ask for it to be rejoined with this other filing.
So what's your aim in all of this? Like,
justice and accountability.
What does justice look like in this scenario?
Oh, wow. I wish I knew, because I've been through so much. I don't know what it would look like.
Yeah,
to me, what I see is 2 people in orange, possibly 3. That would be justice to me.
And it is because and the justification is that they, is it the money aspect or is it what they did specifically to you?
Both. The money, because let me say, after I got an attorney and he filed malicious prosecution, civil conspiracy, and retaliation, $12,000 in depositions that'll put the nail in their coffin, talking about me harshly and how they're going to get me.
Wow.
Hold on. So right now, okay. We were ordered to mediation. So December of 20 is when we had mediation.
Okay.
My attorney allowed them to set the demand. He allowed them to call the shots. He stated that a police escort out was non-negotiable. And I'm so worn down by this time that for me to go along with something like that, totally out of character for me and my personality and the career that I've had and that I survived in.
Sound like you're a fighter. Sound like you stand up for yourself, so yeah.
Well, no one else going to stand up for you. But the thing is, I was teaching the students one thing: honesty, integrity in the workplace, cornerstones of the workplace, all of these ethical things. And they're seeing the opposite. They're seeing their professor going after. They're in $50,000 and $60,000 of student loan debt, where they get a ringside seat to have a alumni come in to cover my classes or cover it with me, where I'm out on medical leave.
What do you think that did to their psyche?
I wish I knew. I had the older students really wanted to raise hell. They came to me and talked about, doing just a rally outside or whatever, something. The majority of them were too scared to do anything. I was on 3 weeks of medical leave. I was already approved for 1 off for personal, but then when that happened, I took an additional 2 weeks off. And some of them told me they didn't even come to school because I wasn't there.
It sounds crazy, man, how they took advantage of the power they had. You know what I mean? It's like the power dynamic.
Totally abused it.
Totally abused it.
Totally abused it.
So what can a person that hears this, what can they do, if anything, to help? Is it the awareness of it all? Is it phone calls people could make? Is it What could people do to get involved? Is it just, how could they help?
I would like to see people take an interest in it. Again, this is dubbed as the whitest HBCU in the country.
And what's the name of the college?
Bluefield State College. It is now Bluefield State University with a chancellor named that oversaw all of these things, the 1.93 million deficit, the 40% decline in enrollment. He put it on the table to change the seal.
And he's still there.
He's now the chancellor.
Wow.
The city of Bluefield did a huge celebration not long ago to honor him as chancellor and his 25 years of dedicated service to the commitment and to the community. Reverend Gary Moore. I broke bread in Gary Moore's home. My son played sports with his son. His wife was one of my students.
Wow.
She's a probation officer. She has covered my classes before.
Wow.
It was people that I knew all my life that ran me out of town on a rail, so to speak.
Wow.
Let me interject for a second. You mentioned how, and I can say this person because I've actually spoken to the clerks in the U.S. District Court of Appeals. Which court are we in?
For the federal case
yes.
is the federal district court, Southern District
of West Virginia. I called and talked to the clerk, and the clerks, when I asked them, like, she filed a motion to proceed in formal paupers. That means to proceed without paying the filing fee. And they were like, oh, well, yeah, this has been here for a year waiting. I have won personally numerous lawsuits. I have never seen the motion is just simple. Do you fall within a certain economic bracket the way you have to pay the filing fee, or you don't?
Yeah.
This is normally a couple weeks thing, tops. Her motion has been pending for over a year. I talked to the clerk, the head clerk out there. The clerk said, I don't know why this is taking so long.
Wow.
The judges refuse to answer this simple motion. The judges out there, I have never seen this in all the years I have litigated. A motion to proceed in formal paupers, which means without pre-paying the filing fee, take a year to decide. There is no logical reason for it.
It's based on who the defendant is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we understand. We understand it because it's the college is the defendant.
Okay. Yeah.
And the individuals involved. The other thing is her attorney doing her mediation. To say he dropped the ball would be the understatement of the year. When you go into these mediation hearings, and I know this from doing personal injury cases out here, since I'm working in a law firm, you don't ask for what you think your client deserves. You ask for several times more.
Oh, he let them set the demand.
And then you
he let them set the demand and settle
negotiate down.
Why though?
Let me go ahead. You answer the question. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say they either bought him off or had something on him. I mean, I don't know of any other reason.
Watch this right
Threaten your
here.
career.
26-year tenured professor. Loved by her students to this day. I've had the fortune to talk to some of her students. They love her. You're not going to have a career like that, and people still love you to this day that will take up stakes and come to where you are to make sure that you are good and have the thing that you need.
Yeah.
If you were a shabby professor, this is someone that took personal interest in her students' lives to make sure that they were properly educated. So when they enter this field, they would be prepared.
Yeah.
They were
Life
going
and
to
death field.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So now you have, with all that being said, can I tell them what they forced you to take? Because it was this or nothing. Can I tell them what they forced you to take?
Go ahead.
They forced her to take 24, and I'm gonna get a little, y'all not even like the word, 24 pissy dollars, 24,000 pissy little dollars.
Well, it was $37,500, but then I had to pay for the depositions and the attorney fees.
So there you go.
So I get 24.
After 26 years of service to this college, this one particular institution, she walked away with less than $1,000 a year for each year.
I was under contract for more than that.
Wow.
There was a breach of contract,
contract.
Bullying, duress, coercion. And 6 weeks after they escorted me out, he told me, you can take this and leave now, or you can be fired, because you're going to be fired. 6 weeks later, it came out that Bluefield State College could not provide a detailed budget for 5 years. Now, that's the state funding. State funding.
That right there.
Who was locked up?
And they wanted me
the
gone.
key.
Who was in jail for that?
No one.
Who got fired for that?
They haven't even.
How many years was that?
She was there 35 years.
No,
in that
how many
position.
years were they saying that they could not account for their budget?
5.
5 years.
And she's in the position for 35, so you need to look a little further.
You can't account. What does the IRS normally do to people that can't account for their finances? They're going to be audited. And you're going to be held accountable.
They did do a legislative audit.
And then what happened?
They wrote a legislative audit report.
And what happened?
Nothing.
But see, what the problem was, she began to open her mouth about the skeletons they had in the closet there. And that right there, they knew it had the real possibility to open that can of worms that they don't want to see open. We talked about nepotism earlier in the state prisons. How much more so we're talking about people getting state jobs. How much more so when you have an individual that's receiving $75,000 a year for just showing up and drinking coffee and rubbing women on the shoulders. And then his son gets a $250,000 contract
for a graphic
to draw a picture of a seal.
Now, that was the engineering contractor's son.
Okay,
Telecommunications
oh, I'm sorry.
was the one for $300,000.
But even still, it's all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
And not only that, he sold equipment to the school. And because I was in a room where the audio-visual equipment was going in, and he's like, well, be a couple of weeks before I can get to that, you know.
Yeah, the thing about this thing that is like really, you know what I mean, I think that people want to gravitate to is that this is a HBCU.
This is my thing. Why I think it should be on the map, and why people need to know, and they need to care.
Yes.
This is their federal dollars being fleeced. And what I found is people don't care.
People should. But you think if people don't care, people don't know.
People don't know. I didn't know.
But people do know. Don't seem. I haven't found anyone that seems to care.
They see what happened to you.
Yes, exactly.
When they first began going into these meetings, she wasn't by herself. There were other professors that were going in there with her. They were a group.
Faculty and staff.
Faculty and they were a group. They went in there as a unit. When they began to make examples out of her, they went back into the cracks and crevices.
They were either brought off or promoted, something like that. But after I saw that article where they couldn't account for 5 years of budget, they wanted me gone before that came out, clearly.
I bet.
So after that is when I filed a petition to invalidate the settlement agreement.
Yes.
Based on a number of factors, and that's why where we're at now.
All right. So the thing you just mentioned about the federal dollars. Whose federal dollars? Is it West Virginia? Is it a certain county? Is it a certain area that people can look to say, hey, these federal dollars are coming from where? Whose federal dollars is it? Like, I guess, is it
the federal, all
federal
over
government?
Federal
So
government.
They come from all of our pockets.
from all of our pockets?
For the taxes that we pay come
If
from
you
all
pay
of our
federal
pockets.
taxes, you're affected. Those
Exactly.
are your dollars.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't sure that what the college, their funding was federal dollars from a certain area.
Oh, no.
Federal dollar from the federal government.
No.
Okay.
So
No.
the misallocation of federal.
They get millions based on their designation as an HBCU.
And most of the staff there is white.
The entire administration practically is white.
And the students there. Now, so what's
Watch
the
this.
So what's
Watch
the
this.
students?
Roughly about, they claim now it's about 22% since they bought football back in 2021. But prior to that, with the decline in enrollment and all, we were running 6 and 7%.
Wow. 6 to 7% what?
6 to 7%.
Wow.
Black student
This
population.
is an HBCU
Wow.
with all white administration.
And
6 to 7%, 6 to 7% African American enrollment. That meant that 93 to 94% of the students there were white,
Right.
but it's designated as a HBCU, and with that designation, they're allowed to obtain more money. Go back. The parallel is the prison system. The higher the security level is for the prison, the more money the officers make. So you have officers at Red Onion State Prison that make more money than at, say, for instance, St. Bride's. So, and again, you have to look who are these dollars going to. Mm-hmm. We don't have to sit here and say black, white, black, white, black, white. But common sense should start ringing like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's how they're getting the money.
You probably have 5 or 6 at the top making well over $1.5 million between them.
That is insane.
With no students. And there are different sites that like payroll.com picks it up. Bluefield State University amongst the highest paid in the country.
Now,
But you look, I've saw my students go from cutoff at the fire marshal to 5, 7, and 3 in class.
Now
7,
watch
5,
this.
and
You have
3.
to keep this in mind. They're making that kind of money. They say, okay, we need to compensate our administration. We need to compensate them so we can have a well-run institution. Okay, but remember the initial problem was that they're living in housing with mold in it.
Yeah.
So you couldn't take that $250,000 and go and do some repairs to where your students are living?
And that's exactly in meetings. Staff would, faculty would say, and then some staff would say, before you go and build that, do you think you can fix that hole in the ceiling in the bathroom?
Yeah.
What about
and they're
those
like,
tiles
no.
falling down in my classroom? My blinds that are down in my classroom?
And they're like, no, Johnny had to send his kids to college.
So misappropriation of funds is the biggest issue of all of this.
Yes, fiduciary trust.
Yeah, at HBCU with a majority of not all white staff and a 6 to 7% African American student.
They say right now it's 22 since they bought back football. But prior to that, yes.
That is so.
With that, listen, with the changing of the seal at $250,000, with that was a master facilities plan to build a dorm, to build parking structure. It was well over $800,000 on that.
Mm-hmm.
Not one thing came to fruition.
Tell them what they did with the dirt. This is a real story.
Yeah, they came out. They were going to fill up the dirt and the grass to start building the dorm. So they bring out all this equipment, these bulldozers, and they stir it up. Take the dirt out, put it on the side. After the show, after everybody's gone, they put the dirt back in, and weeks later move the equipment, and that's it. It's still sitting there like that right now as an eyesore on the campus.
Almost $1 million. Where did it go? It went. Those dollars went somewhere.
Yeah.
Someone pocketed that money, and they did no work.
Yep.
That is crazy that systems like that still exist.
But do you understand the danger that she has? She torpedoed her career for doing the right thing.
Yes.
For speaking out about the right things, and she did it the right way. And as a result, I'm calling upon people. We're getting ready to launch a petition. I want to do this show before we launch the petition. We're going to put it on ourpetitions.com.
Okay.
And we're going to ask you all to call out to Bluefield State University and demand justice for Ms. Warner. We're going to ask you all to start calling the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of West Virginia.
Okay.
And ask them to move her case along. It does not take a year to decide whether or not she should be granted ability to proceed in formal paupers. You have left her impoverished. You have taken her money. You've taken her benefits. You've taken her life insurance. She's suffering the loss of all of these things. We're asking every teacher around the country, if you are a professor from preschool to being the dean, if you were in her shoes and you would have spoken out against these things, you would have wanted people to come to your aid and assistance. I am a lone paralegal. I am begging any attorney that hears this podcast, please join the case. She can't pay you right now, but I will work for you for free. I will not charge you a penny, and I will do all the legwork. We just need an attorney that can come on that has a license to practice in West Virginia to come and help us with this case.
How can they get in contact with either one of you?
You can call me at 757-330-3260. That's my DJB Paralegal Service. You can reach me also at djbparalegalsvc.com. That's my website.
Okay.
And you can get in contact with me regarding Ms. Warner's case. And I'll work, like I said, I'll work for free. We had a hearing yesterday where they tried to claim that this is against her attorney.
Legal malpractice.
And they tried to claim that the court that the legal malpractice took place in, the judge actually issued an order saying that he did not think the court had jurisdiction because she filed it in the wrong venue. I was stunned. So we did what we had to do and went to the hearing yesterday. And when the judge heard that I was there, all he about hit the fan. He was like, well, let me tell you something. You're not a lawyer. You can't practice in this. And if you were here, I wouldn't even let you sit at the table. In fact, I wouldn't even let you whisper in her ear. So you cannot be her attorney. You're not a licensed attorney. I said, well, sir, Mr. Warner has vision problems, and I'm only here to act in a secretarial capacity for Ms. Warner. Well, that's all you can do. Yeah, all right, So we did what we did, and well, she was there yesterday for a motion for default judgment. The defendant in the case refused to respond to the lawsuit. The old lawyer.
$3 million.
How long ago was it that he was supposed to have responded?
He had 21 days to respond. He was served March 20th.
So, it's June the 15th yesterday.
Yeah.
Make sure. Yeah, this 14th yesterday. So, the judge says he wasn't there yesterday either. His third lawyer came to court. So he said they utterly ignored the default judgment. So he said, well, I'm going to deny your motion. He kept talking. So she like, Your Honor, is it my understanding that you denied the motion? So he like, yes. She was like, well, can you tell me why? Well, his attorney is here now, and the Supreme Court.
Because they showed up.
Because they showed up.
That's what he said.
Forget the statutory requirement to show up in to respond in a certain 21 days from the date you're served. The judge said, oh, well, his lawyer's here today, so we're going to deny your motion.
Wow.
I was stunned. So the legislative branch out there have established a statutory response time. The judge has attempted yesterday to subvert the law by issuing an opinion that is not supported by anything. He said, well, I believe that the Supreme Court of West Virginia does not want cases decided on default judgment. That's not their job. They are the judicial branch. The legislative branch sets the statutory time frame in which you must reply, unless there are exigent circumstances that allow you to not reply, or that excuse you from having not replied. The judge has, in essence, tried to substitute his view of what the law should be for what the law actually is. So she noted her exception to what he said and her desire to file an interlocutory appeal. So we're going to need you all to get on board, start reaching out to the governor of West Virginia, start reaching out to the chancellor of the school, start reaching out to those who are responsible for funding this HBCU.
Yeah.
They can reverse this. They can give her job back.
Would you want your job back?
Well, initially that's what I asked for, was to be reinstated. I've changed it so many times. Every time I file something, I've changed my relief sought.
And she's been blackballed. I'm sorry. She's been blackballed. Like I
really want to teach again.
Her credentials are impeccable. Why does she not have a job? To anyone that's listening that may be affiliated with these schools that have received her resume, why does she not have a job? Give us something in writing that explains why Mrs. Warner does not have a job. A beloved professor that has all this time in the field, an accomplished academic, and yet she sits here today and we have these schools that lack someone with her experience. Why does she not have a job? Someone needs to have the guts to say, okay, we're not West Virginia. We're not going to follow their precedent. We're going to do the right thing, and we're going to give her an interview process. We're going to bring her in, and we're going to see if she actually meets the criteria to work. And if she does, we're going to give her a job. So I challenge anyone that receives Mrs. Warner's resume to step up to the plate and give her a job. Let her do what she's trained to do, what she's qualified to do. And the college and your students will benefit for it.
And, I would like to say that this is unique to me, my case, but this is a pattern across the country. It's referred to as institutional betrayal, with tenured professors being forced to resign or being fired for speaking out. The Supreme Court has just taken a case. I forget where the professor was or what university, but his attorney stated a university cannot throw everything but the kitchen sink at faculty to silence them. Yeah. And the Supreme Court has just taken the case.
Is there kind of like whistleblower protection in those situations?
In the state and the federal. I had a whistleblower reprisal investigated. They were misled by the college officials. And when I informed them of that, and I said, is it not, a crime to lie to a federal investigator?
Yeah.
The response was, it depends on how significant the lie is.
What?
Mm-hmm. She has, since her case has been, one of her cases was dismissed, she has since come across new evidence that supported everything she's been saying all along. Tangible, and not just testimony, but tangible evidence. What is that you've come across lately? Tell them about that.
What's that?
The video. Was it the video where he made the comment about?
The retaliatory
Yes,
remarks?
yes.
Okay. Well, evidently I was used as an example. This is what's going to happen to you if you don't shut up. Mm-hmm. So things evidently continued to go downhill, and 4 faculty specifically spoke out, and he named them in the paper. There's an article inside Higher Education in November says President Mull's punishment for complainers.
Wow.
And he was threatening to fire them. They filed accreditation violations, 155 pages of accreditation violations. Mm-hmm. He said he had a blog, Campus Maverick. He deemed himself Campus Maverick, that New World University president, and that basically, he was called out for his retaliatory remarks, but specifically Foundation of Individual Rights and Expression out of Philadelphia, asking him to retract his retaliatory remarks. I don't know that he would never do that. He's too egotistical.
Yeah.
But you can't unring a bell. He said what he wanted. But there are about 4 different articles out there right now related to his brazenness.
Abuse of power?
Yes.
Do you recall one comment in particular he made? But what he was going to do about staff that spoke out on his university?
Well, he said, get on board with my administration or else.
That's it right there.
To get on board or else?
Or else, like, listen, man,
Yeah.
like, hey, this guy is, he's like the Trump of
And
his college,
he'd been
man.
a former president at another West Virginia college, forced to resign for lack of votes of no confidence.
Wow.
Because there were like 11 ethical violations.
Wow.
And then they made him head of like the tax legal department for the state.
No, seriously.
And then he brought in, when he came in, he brought in as a vice president, Brent Benjamin, who had been on the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals and handled, I don't know if you guys ever heard about the case with the 27 minors that were killed in 2010. Massey Cole was involved in that. And Brent Benjamin reportedly took $3 million to protect Don Massey. In fact, I'm told by the judge that was running against him for the Supreme Court, I'm told that John Grisham's book, The Appeal, is about that case.
Allegedly.
And set in Tennessee.
Allegedly.
Set in Tennessee, not West Virginia. But
Right.
he had all kinds of things called out about impartiality over that and all of that. He was the one that, you have to understand how worn down I must have been for me to go along with a police escort out.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Prior, knowing I'm still employed.
Yeah, that's super unfortunate, man. It sucks. It breaks my heart to hear all of that. Everything that happened to you.
And they also took out motions for protective orders against me.
Against her.
2, one in 18 into federal court, and the magistrate granted it. And listen, she had her secretary send me an email setting up a hearing based on a motion for a protective order, and I'm like, this doesn't happen. I have federal probation officers come in my class for 20 years with their dog and pony show, we used to say, and they'd never heard of a motion for a protective order entered in federal court or hearing granted for such. So
it's crazy. It seemed like they could just bend the law.
right.
Or
I
bend
let
it
her
to their
know that I was in constructive contempt because there was no legal or factual basis. Because had I gone, I would have walked out with a protection order against me. Trust me.
It's crazy because if a regular person that don't have any of this information would get pulled in the system, and they would get put through the ringer because they don't know that these things are legal or not legal, or not president or whatever the case.
And I've seen it on the criminal side for 42 years.
I was about to say,
and to end up on the end in my career, the end of a career in the civil.
Mm-hmm. How does that make you look at the judicial system?
I'm cynical, very cynical.
Yeah. Do you not believe in it, or do you think it needs to be?
It needs a complete overhaul. Complete overhaul. Yes.
Yeah.
Why? Why don't you overhaul? It works the way it was designed to work.
Because
This is true. It works exactly the way it's designed to, but somebody needs to change the
They're not
design.
going to overhaul that. You can't change the design. You have to break it. You have to get rid of it.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So yeah, it is perfect for what it was put in place
Right.
for,
Right.
but not who it was put in place for.
Right.
So,
And I met Piper Kerman at a conference, and actually a bunch of quills in a barn. And Piper Kerman, she's the author of Orange is the New Black. She served time in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And on her panel, that's one of the things she said. The system operates just as it's designed to.
broken.
You know, she said, you all talk about system is broken, system so broken. No, it's operating exactly the way it's designed to.
Yes.
Oh man. All
What
right.
happens? Let me say this one point. What happens is when you start getting the opioid epidemic that hits the white community. So now this system catches up who it wasn't designed to catch. So now you're talking about bringing back parole. Now you're talking about bringing back earned sentence credits. Now you're talking about we need to be more we need to be more rehabilitation minded than punitive. But it's because it got outside of the black and brown community, outside of the poor community. Because that's another thing people fail to understand. Go to Colorado. There are more white guys locked up in Colorado, man, than you would ever think. They are the majority out there. We are the minority. So I want to point that out also. So it depends on where you are. Some things cross socioeconomic boundaries. And when they start yanking up people that weren't supposed to yank up, and then they're like, oh man, little Jody just got this robbery charge. We got to give him 25 years mandatory.
That's great.
So little Sean and Jody got the same time now. Well, hey, that's what happens. But the difference is Jody's parents know such and such who's on this board, and they know this politician. Now they're going to start making changes to this thing. One thing I noticed, and I don't know if you all caught this, the interconnectedness of the people at your school, the people that work the court. While we were waiting for the judge to come out yesterday, the judge didn't know we were there because the video wouldn't put up. They came in, oh man, and dude, it was the buddiest affairs before they knew. They were like, well, so they're like, hey man, so hey, when is the plaintiff going to get here? They're like, she's already on the phone. Everything changed. All the chumminess went right out the window.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, it was like being a fly on the wall.
And I'm very familiar with the courthouse work group. I worked in it and testified for,
is that the norm?
Students revocations and things, not students, but offenders.
Is it the norm for that kind of?
Yes.
So how do we not change? I don't want to use the word change because change is kind of definite and final. So how do we influence change in that space?
She's the perfect example. She's the perfect example. Here's why I say that. I'm going to say this right here, real fast. Martin Luther King could have lived a very cushy life. Malcolm X was promised a lot if he would just shut up. Nelson Mandela was an attorney in South Africa, apartheid South Africa. He was an attorney. He would have lived a very well middle-class life. He would not have suffered the poverty that impacted his people over there. She was a tenured professor. Her life was going good. She didn't live in the dorms. The seal did not take one out of her pocket per se. She chose to do what these men did. They spoke up about something they saw that was wrong, and it was mainly being done to other people. Yes, there was an issue with her department, but the bulk of things being done were not being directed to her individually. Because guess what? If they gave you the best of the department, they didn't change your pay because they weren't giving her a raise. So who was impacted the most? Students. She spoke up about how her students were going to be ill impacted by what they were doing.
Well, I continued to express my disappointment of them being denied a subject matter expert in the classroom when they're going after me. And forcing me to have to be gone to cope, to cope. And I mentioned the first motion for a protective order. Well, I told her I was in constructive contempt, so she gave them 30 days, present the evidence or withdraw it. They withdrew it because they didn't have any evidence. So then this Brent Benjamin came on board. I had another grievance hearing. No, what he did was present a settlement agreement and said it was not signed, but it was agreed to in principle.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I did my petition, I said I signed it, but I didn't agree to it in principle. So
that's hilarious.
So anyway, he asked that it be moved from Beckley, West Virginia, where we usually had them, to Charleston, which was 2 hours away, so that the Capitol Police could be present because witnesses had expressed concern for their safety.
Wow.
From
Me. And it was granted with no
granted, no.
questions asked.
Wow.
It was granted.
Out of an abundance of caution.
It was granted. These were the things they did to me in prison. They would tell the courts that I was a management problem, that they had to use these special restraints on me, that they had to escort me with they would put me in these full restraints. Officers that would walk with me had full riot gear on. They would have one officer standing by with a taser and another officer standing by with a MK-46 gas canister, looks like a fire extinguisher with OC gas in it. And I'm cuffed and shackled with belly chains on. They said they needed all this to get me from the cell to the transportation van into the courtroom.
Wow.
I'm 5'7". Back then I probably weighed 140 pounds because they were starving me. What was I going to do to them?
Yeah.
What was Miss Warner going to do to someone that they felt that they needed to do? It doesn't make sense. But what it does is it paints this negative picture of her.
Total defamation.
Total defamation. 100%.
Personal and professional.
Yes.
It seemed like this is what the judicial system is known to kind of do.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? It paints a picture for a person that it wants to put in a certain place, or
Yes.
the way it wants this person to come through the system and operate. So they
And actually, with that, I was looking forward to going. I'd already called the media, Charleston Gazette, to say,
Yeah.
hey, look, I'm a tenured professor. I got a grievance hearing at the Capitol, and they've requested the police to be present. I'd worked with the guy off and on, sent him stuff. And also, back in the middle of all that was 2018, an Association of Governing Board report. We paid, I don't know how many thousands of dollars. I'm sure it was federal funding, because I asked from the state auditors for counting, and they don't have it. So it tells me it's out of federal funding. But anyway, it was 32 pages this thick with all kind of negative press and publicity.
Wow.
But I ended up withdrawing that hearing because, or about that grievance. It was the day before it was to happen because it was snowing. It was 2 hours away. And it was this new Brent Benjamin, and I wasn't going to get into a third level grievance hearing and let them, when I knew I had them, and if anyone ever applied the law fairly, that I would be victorious.
I want to say this last thing here. Even more than what was going on with her professionally, what jerked at my heartstrings was what was going on with her at home. Her husband was in hospice. I'm sorry, I have to say this. Her husband was in hospice care. He was on his deathbed. And she was going through all this while her husband was dying.
That's
so I
even
want you
heavier.
to put yourself in that mind frame where the love of your life for 35, 36 years.
34.
Don't cry. I'm sorry, bro. I gotta Don't cry. Don't cry. It's okay. But seriously, you good? Cry, baby. So, laugh. Imagine that 34 years of being married and your loved one is passing and you're dealing with being treated as if you were the scum of the earth.
After you gave somebody 20 something years.
26 years.
26 years of your dedication. That's
And they still have not answered what they did. They still did not answer what they did. So.
yeah. All right, so let's.
I'd like to say this.
Go ahead.
I had a call not long ago from, it's part of that picture I gave you of me in flames, but I had written like 3 pages on the history of Bluefield State. I had a contact from a 1957 grad, an alumni of Bluefield State.
Wow.
Research scientist, a retired research scientist.
Wow.
And he was so upset. He said, I've read what you wrote. I'm in a debt of gratitude.
Wow.
And he said, we're all dying off, and the school's been taken from us. And the ones that are there have been bought off.
That last statement that you said, I think that is one of the most powerful things, that the school has been taken from us. I think that people hearing this and hearing that this air quotes HBCU
Run as a private white institution.
is run as a private white institution. I'm hoping that the court of a public opinion will pay attention to something like this and bring awareness to it. I'm a belief that right now in 2023, awareness or a public outcry gets things moving along. You know what I mean? So
I agree.
I hope that this podcast serves as a catalyst to reach different people's ears and different places to get that thing started, to get that social awareness going so people can be aware of these kind of things, because this is just one incident, I'm sure. But
Exactly.
But this is an incident that people can actually hear about from the person that's been in the seat, you know what I mean, and understand this process. And also, it's mind-boggling to me that an HBCU can actually be ran. I don't want to keep repeating it, but it just.
But the thing is, look at the minorities and even their own grads that they're locking out. They're not even giving opportunities for people to apply for positions in the administrative level.
Yeah, that's wild. So again, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna ask. We're gonna wrap it up in a second. So how did it? Well, no, not you, because you gave your. How do they reach you? How do they contact you? How could they support you?
Okay. My email is Hallman-Warner, all lowercase, 13 at Gmail. Hallman-Warner 13 at Gmail. That is HALLMANWARNER 13 at Hotmail. No, at Gmail. What am I saying? At gmail.com.
Yeah.
Hallman-Warner 13. It was whistleblower HBCU at Gmail. I think I shouldn't have changed it.
Yeah, you should have kept that
Keep that account open.
I think I might reopen it. But and my number is 304-809-6280.
Okay.
I would welcome hearing from anyone.
Okay. Donell, you want to give your information again, and then we're gonna shift the conversation and wrap it on up.
Yes. You can reach me at 757-330-3260. And my email is, you can reach me at djbparalegalsvc.com.
Okay. So just going to wrap it up a little bit, just wind down a little bit. A big topic everybody's talking about, and I'm curious to hear both y'all perspective for different reasons. One, because of what you've been through these last 20-odd years, and you being a teacher. AI is this big conversation that everybody's talking about, and I'm curious for you first, Donell, that you've been gone for 22 years, right? How long have you been home?
Since December the 1st. So 7 months.
7 months. What's your perspective of AI?
Let me start right here. You see this? I have 2 phones that stay on me, bro.
Yeah.
I have 2 iPhone 12s. I have, behind you, I have a new laptop. I have a Mac. What is that tablet called? Apple.
iPad?
iPad. I have an iPad. I think it's a 10. It's a newer generation. Mm-hmm. I have AirPods back there. Mm-hmm. Technology is amazing. It allows me to do my job a lot faster than I would have been able to do it at one point.
For sure.
For instance, when I need to do a research for a client, a research paper, like the world's at my fingertips. Yeah. It's just a matter of putting in the right question to the search engine, and it gives you everything. To the point where, if let's say, for instance, if I may know the law, but I might not know how certain courts structure their documents when they're filed in that court. I go in, type that court in, type the type of motion it is. I click on images will come up.
See, I think you're talking about the age of information.
No,
I think you're talking about
artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to get there.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that information. I'm very information driven.
Okay.
So I started seeing where people were taking their voices and making their voices sound like rappers.
Yes.
And I'm like, yo, how do you do that? How do you take someone else's voice? There's some kind of algorithm someone has written somewhere, the ones and zeros, and they make you can literally make that rapper's voice your voice and make a song.
Yes, literally.
I think that's amazing. But I think it's dangerous also because you have to look at it. It could be positive, but it also can have some negative ramifications for that.
I agree.
The autonomous cars that drive themselves, that's amazing.
Also scary.
Most definitely scary. Oh, absolutely. I was driving there. Guy was in a Tesla, and he was just like this, and he was reading something. The car was driving itself, and I got on past that guy real fast. Man.
Yeah.
But I think that AI, as with anything else, if used the right way, it's good.
Okay.
You have to be very careful when you start misusing it to weaponize it on the individual level or weaponizing it on the state level, where you're doing deep fake videos and you're making acting like politicians are saying certain things they didn't say, and by the time you catch up to that lie, the damage is already done.
Yep, it's already happening. With grandparents.
Right.
I don't know what state it was, but I heard some crazy fact that it was like the scam was like over $20-something million of grandparents, where people were calling their grandparents and acting like a family member.
And the same voice. It's the same voice of their famy member.
Yep.
They think they've been kidnapped or something.
Yeah, they've been kidnapped. They've been locked up. Hey, I'm in jail. I got locked up. I need you to bail me out. They even went as far as sending fake lawyers to people's houses to get the money.
Oh my goodness, I didn't hear that.
Someone got on my page the other day and told me that I can get this grant, but they were acting like one of my best friends, and they were saying I can get this grant, and I had to do this information, take a picture of my ID card. I said, wait a minute, man. So I text like, bro, is this you online? He's like, what are you talking about? Like, call me immediately.
Yeah, it happened
So
just that
I got
fast.
back on. I'm like, listen, I should check this out, man. Whoever you are, you don't want to play my information. Just please don't do that.
Yeah.
Like the wrong guy, don't do that. So
It's getting scary out here.
It
Because
is. It really is.
You can click a link, and that's all it takes. And then they can take over your whole phone.
Because you click the link.
Yeah.
Someone's running a UPS scam saying that my package came and it was not they had to send it back to the warehouse. I went to the post office yesterday, asked the guy, he like, dude, that's a scam.
Yeah, super scam. So
AI.
you as a teacher, with education and the age of information and AI, the world is changing. The access to information is changing. The way people digest information is changing. And you have a experience from way back before the internet era until now.
Yes.
So how do you view AI?
I do have experience because I used to write my parole review summaries and have to give them to a secretary to type and give them back to me to review. So we didn't have computers.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I was a parole officer for 5 counties in rural South Georgia.
Yeah.
I did not have a cell phone.
So
Going out by myself.
So
I had my little Charter Arm 38 though.
So how was it the transition to the internet era?
Wow, it took me a long time. It was almost like going from working in the field to academe, and similarly adjustment from typing to going to the use of a computer for writing reports and everything. It has come so far.
Yeah.
The AI, I think, is a wonderful tool. But again, as you both pointed out, it has its limitations. You have to be very careful with it because it can be very dangerous. Yeah. Some examples that you gave is one of them. On the other hand, you have bots that are passing the bar, you know. So it's...
I appreciate the AI. I appreciate the intelligence because I look at it as just as an extension of our intelligence.
Yes.
It's human intelligence of all this information that we have and possess and with us as a human culture.
Yes.
Now we're able to put it into a super intelligent, sentient being almost. You know what I'm saying? So now you have a person, not a air quotes person that you can ask or something you can ask and give you real time information and feedback and respond to you just like a human would.
Right.
And put inflection on it, put feelings in the words.
Exactly.
It's crazy that you can even teach your AI to make it more human-like.
I just had a thing the other night that I heard on relationships with AI that people don't have time. They're busy. They're having a relationship with, someone speaking with AI.
Yeah, that's where I draw the line. I don't.
I didn't know that.
Listen, I can't fathom. Like I get using AI for almost every other application. In human society, just about. But when it comes to connection, I think that should be reserved for another hand.
But that's where it's going in the future. It's going to be more and more like that. Yeah. I mean, I believe it is because
what happens if it breaks down?
They can't break down. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's a computer or is a...
But that's what I'm saying. It could cut off. All your information is stored in it lost. Your whole relationship is gone.
Yeah, but this is what we're moving to, man. Like the world, the internet world, from my perspective. Because I'm 39, so I'm not old, and I grew up in a younger era. I grew up as a kid to where 2As and cell phones came about when I was like in high school.
Okay.
So I was able to see the Oregon Trails and all that during school when the floppy disk was around. So I came around when internet was, as a kid, internet was around, but it was AOL. it's not what it is today.
Right.
So I saw the progression of it from AOL,
Right.
Oregon Trail, and all those little
Right.
BS games, and to where it is now. So my perspective is that the good part about it is the intelligent part. The bad part about it is how it disconnects us from the real world.
Exactly.
Everything around us. All the conversation, everything we learn from people, all that kind of just starts to fade away. Even the services. I can go into AI now and I could type show notes. I can say, hey, yesterday I sat down on a podcast and I sat down with this person and put BS information in there and say, hey, turn this into something that sound professional. Show notes include X, Y, Z. And then to kick it out like that.
You can scan that court order and
Snap
it'll
of a finger.
write your response like that.
Yes, you can have a court order if you have something to submit in writing to anywhere, right?
Right.
You can type it into ChatGPT and say, hey, revise this and make sure that it hits these points, or make sure that it does this. Add humor, add personability.
Can you send me that, bro?
I've been telling you this.
Well, you did. I didn't get it.
It is crazy.
You're serious?
Listen. As far as like for me,
I'm about to start taking on more clients. Me and my AI assistant.
I'm telling you,
I'm not joking.
The way the world,
this part.
Yeah, the way the world, hey, it's out there. So the way the world is moving though is that the thing is going to be the money making in the future is not what you can do, it's how many things you could do by yourself. So now, like me, right? I do podcasting, I do photography, I do websites, I do graphics. I do artist development. I help people build their podcast. But now I could take this video and I can use an AI plugin to help me chop it up. It could help me sync up the audio to the video, which takes hours of work. I can take the show notes that I got to write about whatever I got it is. I can BS it and say, hey, clean this up, make it sound professional. Boom.
It's amazing.
And it does it. So now I don't have to worry about doing the show notes myself. I can take all the write-ups that I'm using for doing a person's website. Hey, I need a website about this. I can go in and search every single thing about that, and the AI will construct me everything I need in a very consumable way, digestible way to put on the web. I can copy and paste.
So is there a particular site that you're going to? Is it
ChatGPT?
ChatGPT is the popular one.
Then there's AI Legal.
Yeah, there's Bard. Google has their one called Bard. Bard is just like ChatGPT, but it's just Google's version of it. It's not as good as ChatGPT, but it's still good. There's a couple of them, man. I'm gonna put you on Donell.
I asked it to write me a song about a professor charged with a crime because I pull the hymn of the school, the alma mater, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I want to do a little hip hop thing
I'm telling you
to that.
It works.
It did me 4 different songs, and I'm still trying to piece them together because it was really good about the professor talking about going to court and then going to court.
Chat GPT. GPT. That's the most popular one. It has an app now and everything. And when you get on that down there, it's gonna really blow your mind. It's basically a language learning kind of program.
And for teachers, lesson plans and all of that, it is phenomenal now. A lot of the teachers have a problem with students doing their papers and all, I think, but you got to look at the different generations. And that was one of the things we looked at heavily at generations.
I'll say, will you be charged? Could you be guilty of plagiarism if you were to use that?
Now, the new one, the new AI, yes, but so it's getting crazy though because they figured that part out. They figured out that people were using ChatGPT to write papers, right? So then the professors were going back and putting these papers in ChatGPT, asking it, "Hey, was this generated by you?" And ChatGPT would say, "Yes, it was an AI generated thing." Wow. But they have other AI generated things to say, "Hey, ChatGPT, write me this paper." Other AI, take this paper and make it sound, make it to where it's not plagiarized at all. And it will scour the whole internet, and it will take that paper, revise it to where your teacher will get it, and it's not plagiarized.
That's amazing.
Because they have all kinds of programs they pay money for to try to see about that.
Yep.
I was a lecture kind of style. I didn't give a lot of homework. You get it or you don't.
Yeah.
You're for gonna this feels for you or it's not. And you're gonna find out by the end of this 4 years.
AI is gonna be the biggest change for society since the technological
Yeah.
boom, and more bigger.
I have, you take a look though at the different generations you talk about, the mindsets and all, because, of course, there's a baby boomer, but then we go to, there are 4 different generations working inside of our correctional facilities. They all have different mindsets. I've seen them, after, the department pays $12,000 to train them, send them off to the academy. They've shadowed a couple of weeks, go to the academy for 6 or 16 weeks, come back,
Different.
walk out one day, the first day back, and never come back after they've spent that money on them. So I mean, they want results then. They don't want an annual performance review. They want to know how they're doing, and they want flexibility with their jobs. We faced this with shortages in the prisons for years, and at one time Georgia was recruiting out of the welfare to work line, reducing the age to 18 to go in as a CO. It's just way too young, and when you take a look at it, I have a friend that runs a large mega jail in Texas, and he's advertising for part-time correctional officers to try to staff his jail.
That's wild.
To try to keep both his staff and inmates safe.
I wonder if they're gonna bring AI into the jails, to the correctional system at some point. I mean, I'm almost positive they will, because it's just another way to cut corner and save money.
I'm gonna say it's gonna replace a lot of jobs, and not just in many
You don't think
segments.
so? I think
Let me
so.
tell you what Virginia just did. I'm sorry. Let me tell you what Virginia just did. Virginia just took at Sussex 1, Sussex 2 State Prison, and Lawrenceville Correction Center. I have pictures. I'll send them to you. They put padlocks on the door. They're short-staffed already. The way the cells are designed, the unit, the intercoms in the cells don't work, so you can't call for help. There are padlocks on the door. There's a ring, a flip-over bar, click, click, padlock. You have to have a key to get in and out of that cell. That means that the emergency overrides from the control booth don't work on the doors anymore.
Yeah.
You can't get your door open by Jimmy anymore in case of an emergency. You're locked in. If someone takes and puts styrofoam into the vent, and this is what has happened in the past, or they stuff the vents with toilet tissue and they set it on fire, it creates smoke, and a lot of it because you're on a closed circulation system.
Yeah, for sure.
And you smoke the entire pot out. I stayed locked in the cell one day when the guy set his cell on fire and I couldn't get out. And their excuse was, we didn't have anywhere to put you. And I couldn't sue because in order for me to get clemency, I had to agree that I wouldn't sue DOC for anything that happened to me while I was in there.
Let me give you a hypothetical though. How AI could probably affect that system, because the way they are putting AI is that where they're put it to monitor humans no matter what they say. Hold on, hear me out.
Money.
Hold on, hear me out. So this is what I'm saying though. So if you have a system, right, that's monitoring you in your cell, it monitors what you say, how you feel, and it basically starts predicting all your moves. So if this intelligent machine knows you and knows basically what you're about to go through and is intact with all that, they're going to use that to the advantage. Then you don't need, if someone was to set fire in their thing, AI could be like, hey, this fire is here, let me do these things. It doesn't need to be a human reaction to this thing happening. You dig what I'm saying?
They won't feed you edible food in DOC. They're not going to spend money on that.
But even that's going to be automated. There's nobody going to have to bring you food. Your food going to be delivered through some kind of delivery system.
It already is in California for years, delivering food by robots and doing laundry too.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Do you know what the California DOC budget is every year? Just for medical, $9 billion. Just $9 billion just for medical costs for prisoners out there. So California is a huge state that have a huge tax base. Places like Virginia, you're not going to get that. Bro, I'm telling you what I know for a fact. If you see how they try to shore up these prisons, the prisons are dilapidated. They are broken. They are dirty. They're red onion and water red, and they're different. They're going to tell you quick, you're not going to come over and tear our prisons up. This is how we take care of ourselves. But the majority of these prisons, they are falling apart. The water and sewers are constantly backing up. So they're not going to spend money out here in Virginia to do just that right there, which would solve the problem.
Wow.
They're not going to do it. They don't care.
The West Virginia Regional Jail's in a huge lawsuit right now. FBI's been in there, and just thousands of prisoners.
Yeah.
Affected.
I think even though you say that, I still think AI is going to make its way into our judicial system in a weird way. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to come about, but I think
Court dockets.
Courts,
courts.
yeah.
I think a lot of the lawyers, casework,
yeah,
all that stuff,
a lot of it
is about to get shifted away all to AI, because now your lawyer, right? If you had a lawyer at AI, right, that you can ask any question, and they don't have to go research anything. It's a computer, so it has all the information you need. Hey, give me 5 cases that prove, you know what I'm saying, that says this.
Yes.
It can, boom. It don't have to take a week for this lawyer to go research this or find this information for you.
Right.
Now, AI has all the internet at its access to say, all right, here's 20 cases that says this. Here's an example of this thing. Here's a law that covers this thing. Now, it's just that it's not in the confines of what this lawyer knows in their brain.
Right.
Because maybe that lawyer doesn't know this statute, don't know that statute. Might know a whole bunch of them,
right,
but maybe not all of them. They can get you off. So now, if you have this artificial intelligence that can help you, it's a different ballgame.
Well, the problem is that you still have to question witnesses, and you have to be able to play on emotions, and you have to have. There's a certain amount of. There's a way you can ask a question that can make a person look dumb that is telling the truth. There's a way that you can ask a question that can make a person that is lying seem as if they are telling the truth.
Well, that's the way lawyers are trained, to make the innocent look guilty and the guilty look innocent.
Yep, that's how I go. That's the game. That's
lawyers are trained to tell a story, and they're trained to tell a story in the light most favorable to their client, be their client the state, or be their client the defendant.
Yeah,
that's their job. Their job is to, and unfortunately, that leads to them using evidence that supports their theory and their story versus evidence that actually support what really happened.
Yeah, things are forever changing, and we're on a rapid pace for change. Either way, regardless of which way it goes, is a rapid pace. All right, so let's go and wrap this thing up. First of all, I want to say thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for everything you did. I feel for all the things that you had to go through. The last thing he mentioned, that really just like, damn. Like, I really just, like, after all, even with all that stuff that you had to go through, you had that on top, on your plate as well.
And my husband never saw any justice. So I'm fighting for 2.
Yeah. So listen, I commend you. I send you all my prayers and best wishes that this fight continues, and that people hear this podcast and able to get involved and get involved and reach out and help. And
one thing I've sent, 3:00 in the morning when I was before I met Donell researching rules of civil procedure, I was watching the education and labor workforce that oversees HBCU funding. I've sent out something to every one of them, and emails, nothing.
Well, hopefully this small podcast here can hit somebody's ears, and it rings those bells.
Because the thing is, and what I've come to hate is money, and greed, and it's really which is the love of money. Which is what the whole thing
is double-sided, either the love of money or lack thereof. The two things that drive most of all the messed up things in this society is either lack of money or, the greed of money.
2 businesses, actually 3 businesses opened. 2 board of governors and the vice president of financial affairs opened businesses about a year and a half after the seal was changed.
That's crazy. So, everybody tuning in, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Unorthodox Haven. Donell, I appreciate you, bro.
Absolutely.
This is time number 3 now.
4.
Oh yeah, it is 4. That's crazy. Yeah. So time number 4. Appreciate you like always, brother. Appreciate you bringing the light on this story.
Yes, thank you, bro.
Definitely. I'm going to end it off with a little positive words, and then we can just wrap it up and get out of here. Again, thank everybody for tuning in to the Unorthodox Haven Podcast, listening to this podcast today. Hopefully you hear something that motivates you to get involved with something. If it's not this thing, maybe it's something. Maybe you know somebody going through a process, whether it be in jail, whether it be in school, whether it be with just their peers around home. Reach out and help. Step up and give these people assistance. Some people are going through it out here. As you at the stories you hear today, some people are fighting battles and they're fighting battles on the front end and on the back end and back at home at the same time. A lot of the strongest people in our society need help just as well. You know what I'm saying? A lot of us, the people that stand up, you thinking that they're in the front line, they out there, they're fighting, they're taking the charge and all that, but and you assume that those people are strong and that they have the courage to. So usually people try to get behind them and use them as motivation instead of reaching up and trying to help them and motivate them and give them that assurance that the fight that they're fighting is worth it and it's being heard. So with all that, reach out to your peoples, take care of your peoples, get involved with everything. This HBCU thing is something that I think not just black people need to pay attention to. I think people in general need to be in tune with this kind of stuff. The abuse of power, the abuse of money and the allocation of the dollars that's reserved for certain things like students and higher education being taken advantage of. I think we as a society and as a human being, you should care about things like that. So get involved with things that are going on in your local area. Somebody, you can reach out to Donell for any kind of legal advice. He's a good brother, man. If you have anybody in jail that's trying to fight their case, reach out to him or somebody like him, please, and help you people. Give people a chance to grow, and don't leave them where they are. A lot of people go to jail and they get forgotten about. I'm even a victim of it. I have a I don't even want to call him a good friend. It was an older man that I was around as a youngin'. He got sent off to jail. It's been about 18 years since I've last talked. And I feel guilty for it, you know what I mean, if I'm being honest. But reminder for myself, don't forget about your people. Just because they're locked away and behind a cage or behind a wall doesn't mean that they're not still human. Doesn't mean that they're not still here. Doesn't mean that they can't still get out here and make an effect on society. Donell is one of the most shining examples of that. This man spent 22 years in prison, got himself out, and he hadn't even been out a whole year yet. And you can see all the growth that his brother's been doing, all the things that he's working towards. So it's possible. But don't forget about your peoples. Don't forget about the people behind the wall, the people that's right next to you, the strong individuals in your life. Reach out to them, help them. And on that note, thank everybody for tuning in. Until next time, peace.
Unorthodox Haven Podcast.